What's shaking? So, I got a few lives today that I want to kind of bust out. So this first one, I don't know. This is something I'm always thinking about, and I'm frequently bringing up in conversation. But so I call this video "The New Weapons and Tech Are Coming." Uh, Something I've been thinking about for years. What made me think of this today was there were these reports that I think it was yesterday. There was a weird light over the city of Kiev, Ukraine, capital of Ukraine. So a really weird light in the sky at night, and set off a flurry of speculation. And then the Ukrainian government tells everyone, "Oh, that's a NASA satellite that's re-entering the atmosphere. Don't worry about it." And then, and then the NASA spokesman, the NASA representative said, "Oh no, that's not coming down. That satellite's not coming down for another day or two." So, and I think it was visible over Africa. Um, so yeah, nobody knows what the hell this is, and there's people are like, "Well, what's this all about? Are they debuting are they getting ready to roll out the fake alien invasion?" Which, somebody would definitely like to pull off, for sure. But I think what this is at any rate, it's a sneak preview of the new technology and the new weapons, because in this world, nobody first developing a military weapons application. Then after that's been developed, they might do something that uplifts humanity, that helps people, medically, or logistically, or helps our quality of life. But priority in this world, especially after World War II, when democracy defeated fascism. So they say, um, everything is about weapons development, and then it'll trickle down from there. So I think what we're seeing, and what we've been seeing since, well, I don't want to say since the beginning of the UFO phenomenon, because there have been UFOs, there have been unidentified somethings in the sky for thousands of years, for all of human history. I think, before there was tech here on Earth, it was people were observing ETs, so people were observing beings from other dimensions who were making themselves visible in the 3D. But especially since the end of World War II, we're looking at a lot of man-made, terrestrially made craft that have been flying around. Especially, since the end of World War II, since the late 1940s, early 1950s. I think, it was there were Nazi built craft, and really the Nazis won World War II. Um, today's Hitler's birthday. That's why it's the 420, smoke weed day. Because, the fascists want you to be stoned all the time, so you can't think straight. And so you'll just stew in your resentment. You'll never do anything to change your life. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, the Nazis won World War II. They destroyed Germany. Germany was destroyed, but the Nazis got all the loot. And in the 1930s and 40s, they developed, and this is based on investigators from the Polish intelligence services and the Russian intelligence services, and even former NASA scientists. The the Nazis built technologies back in the 30s and 40s that were way ahead of the state of the art now. So let's say you want to take like fighter aircraft, for example. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is a complete piece of crap compared to what the, the Nazis had by the end of World War II. And I'm not talking about, Messerschmitt, Me-262 jet fighters. I'm talking about like sophisticated, like, saucer type craft, which I think they started building in the 1920s in Germany. So World War II ends, and the top Nazi scientists and the top Nazi intelligence people, and even physicians, they came here to America. They got new homes, they got a new country with an even bigger budget and more resources, and more ability to keep secrets because the country's so huge. And and they built NASA and CIA and NSA and all this stuff. Our highway system, our airlines, our medical system, our submarines, they built it all. So you get these Nazis coming into America, they start building more UFOs, we'll call them, these advanced aircraft that they're not helicopter, and they're not fixed wing, and they're not rockets. So they move differently than any of those rockets or airplanes or jets or helicopters. Much more sophisticated. So we're talking like possibly things that run off of 0 point energy. They don't need a fuel source except for what's in the environment as background radiation. So they're running off background radiation. And there's an anti-gravity capability. So yeah, by the end of World War II, technology was just way ahead of what is the state of the art now in 2023. So this is starting to come out. There's these hypersonic drones and missiles. I do think, Russia is ahead of the U.S. With the hypersonic missiles and like super fast torpedoes. The U.S. got most of the Nazi scientists, so it's like, yeah, I think our space tech is well ahead, but China and Russia, they're actually they're holistic thinkers. They think much more holistically than we do here in America. So they've developed some stuff that is ahead of us, and that we are vulnerable to. Um, and the thing is, people don't want to admit that, but prove to me otherwise. And the thing is here is, what we have going on here in 2023. It's like the Guns of August 2.0. So the Guns of August 2023. So if you're not familiar with the phrase the Guns of August, it was a book written about the outbreak of World War One in the summer of 1914, and basically the empires of Europe were manipulated into military alliances, binary, dualistic military alliances, which split Europe in half onto two sides, everyone pitted against each other. And as per usual, high finance manipulated, bankers, financiers who were working in other capacities, like, what was it, Max Warburg was a banker who was head of German intelligence for the German Empire, and his brother, was one of the signatories of the Versailles Treaty. His brother, Paul, was a central banker in America, signed the Versailles Treaty for America. So people like this were working for these financial empires, were manipulating the empires of Europe into this war. So summer of 1914, you had the Archduke, the heir apparent to the Austrian Empire, Franz Ferdinand, Archduke Prince Franz Ferdinand, assassinated by a Serbian nationalist, Serbian, terrorist. He'd call himself a freedom fighter. So assassinated him in Sarajevo in Bosnia, and it set off this whole chain of events. But in all of these European empires, British, French, German, Austrian, Russian, Italian, you just had diplomacy, and they're having pissing contests, and so they started this massive war, and it was just the most devastating war in recorded history. Probably since the times of the ancient civilizations, which were advanced. So what, the worst war in 10,000 years or something. Um, I started this war that killed millions of people, destroyed Europe. But when it broke out, everybody on each side was like, "Oh, our enemies are such jerk offs. This war will be over by Christmas." Famous last words. This war will be over by Christmas. Our enemies are so stupid and incompetent. Well, what does that sound like? That's not just America, but that's the whole West. That's the entire NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or as I like to say, Nazi aggressor, terrorist organization. Because, a lot of the Nazis stayed in Germany after the war. And the Nazis didn't only start U.S. German intelligence. So during World War II, they created this whole Nazi intelligence network across Eastern Europe through, Poland, Ukraine, Russia, other countries in Eastern Europe. They found people with pro-Nazi sympathies, and they set this up. And this has continued down to the present day. And in 2014, they were the movers and shakers in the coup in Ukraine. So when the Western banks and corporations wanted to overthrow the Ukrainian government, they used this Nazi intelligence network. So right after World War II ended, and the Cold War starts, General Reinhard Gehlen, who was the head of Third Reich intelligence on the Eastern Front in the war against Russia, he ran all the intelligence operations. He made a deal with the Americans, specifically with Allen Dulles, who was the first CIA director, who was then chief of station in Zurich, Switzerland during the war. They made a deal. Gehlen stayed on as the intelligence chief. He became the West German intelligence chief. And he promised that all of his West German intelligence network, all the information coming out of it, would be freely shared with CIA. Well, that's pretty naive to trust that guy, because he wasn't just a double agent, he was a triple agent. So his agents in Eastern Europe also manipulated the Soviets into thinking they were on their side, and they were playing the Americans and the Soviets against each other and inflating their capabilities and hostile intentions. And, it was a real shit show. So, and, down to this day, well, actually, and through the whole Cold War, the not the German people, but the German banks, the large German corporations, and the Nazis that were working within them, they manipulated NATO down to the present day. So they're the ones who would benefit from a NATO victory in Ukraine here, because the German aristocrats and bankers and industrialists have always seen Eastern Europe as their sort of economic exploitation zone that is there for them to exploit and control. So, yeah, a lot of ins and outs to this. But yeah, by the end of World War II, the Nazis had far superior technology to what is state of the art today. I'm pretty sure they gave America the uranium to detonate the the Hiroshima bomb, and they gave the proximity fuses to donate to detonate the Nagasaki bomb in August of 1945. Those were the two atomic bombs that the U.S. detonated over Japan and destroyed two cities. So I think the Nazis even gave that capability. So that's driving this whole thing today. So the whole point is, I think that these Nazi scientists were the driving force behind these these UFOs that have a terrestrial origin. So coming back to the beginning of this monologue, you're seeing these strange lights in the sky over Ukraine. Nobody can, and they're happening all the time, all over the world, but nobody can explain these things. But since Ukraine's a war zone, people are more sensitive. So what we're seeing is we're seeing between this and the hypersonic technologies, and then when you look back to the energy technologies that have sort of, peeked their heads out. What was it? There was a destroyer in the Black Sea in 2008, when the war was going on between Russia and its neighbor Georgia. No, it wasn't Cassin Young. What the hell's the name of that destroyer? Donald Cook, USS Donald Cook. So this destroyer was in the Black Sea, and it was monitoring the war. Well, a Russian fighter jet, 35, 40-year-old Russian fighter jet was circling overhead at 20,000 feet at least. And it had a landing pod on it, but it was very sophisticated. It disabled all electronics on this destroyer, this USS Donald Cook. USS Donald Cook had to be towed into port in Georgia in the Black Sea. And it was so demoralizing for the crew that the crew had to be broken up and sent to other ships. So that's another facet of these new weapons that are coming out, is they're not even lethal. It's like you don't have to kill anyone. I mean, if you disable an airplane, it's probably going to crash, and if the crew doesn't get out, they're fucked, you know what I mean? But if you disable a submarine, it might sink. But that is a new facet of these weapons, is they're not necessarily even lethal. Because these days, all you have to do is disable electronics, and all of your heavy weapons are completely disabled. Nothing is analog anymore. So that's going to be a big thing. I think the US's adversaries are just going to let us look like fools. I don't even think they're going to cause us mega death. They're just going to shut our shit down and walk away. And there's most probably, when you look at the way in the last 30 years, every president in the US has been bending over for the Chinese communists. Now the Chinese communists have these secret police stations here in America. It wouldn't surprise me that there's a massive Chinese capability here in America to just shut our whole fucking grid down, kill the internet and the power grid, and they'll just walk away. And it's and people are oh, if they do that, they'll invade. And it's no, I don't even think they want to get into that mess. I think they just want to give us a taste of our own medicine, because that's what the U.S. government does. They use the military to do when they don't like a country. When some third world country doesn't give, the corporate frat boys in Wall Street and Fortune 500 what they want, they send aircraft and technologies over there to just jam the shit out of everything, so another infrastructure works. So good chance I don't know. There's a possibility we'll get a taste of that medicine. Who knows? But yeah, I think really the only people in the world who have been assholes enough to use nuclear weapons on another country are the the globalist wasps, the Anglo-Saxon Protestants that run America. They dropped two nuclear weapons on Japan, and they've been threatening to do it to anybody who stands in their way of basically, world economic domination ever since. So yeah, I think these new weapons are far beyond nukes, and but they're not necessarily lethal. Like if you can shut a country's grid down, you can do whatever you want. So, warfare is getting sneakier because the corporations have more power than the governments now, and they don't want consumers to be liquidated. They want the consumers to survive. So, greed works in our favor sometimes. So yeah, but yeah, look, watch for the new weapons and don't be surprised. So energy weapons. I think they got a big debut on 9/11. I think 9/11, was a combination of probably the billing columns all wrapped and wired with plastic explosive. But then at the same time, I think there were scalar weapons, energy weapons that basically vaporized that building because a jet fueled fire doesn't turn a building to powder. I think those buildings were resonated to dust. And so, yeah, energy weapons, hypersonics, zero gravities, 0 point, all that kind of thing. So don't be surprised if you see it. And this eclipse we just had, it's basically, it turns our thinking, Aries, what goes on in our heads, upside down. It was a Rahu eclipse. Rahu was a revealer. Uranus was in the same sign and house. Uranus is the air. Uranus is electricity, technology, breath. What else was in there? Yeah, Mercury was in there. Intellect. So yeah, just turning our thinking upside down. And again, Rahu is a revealer. All right. I'm going to leave that one there. Just a little food for thought. Have a good one.